Hi, my name is Michael, I'm 43 years old, and up until recently I thought I had a pretty stable, if somewhat ordinary, life. I'm not the kind of guy who usually shares deeply personal stories online, but the last few months have ripped apart every certainty I thought I had, and I don't really know where else to put these words. I've been married to my wife, Lavra, for almost 18 years. We met in our mid-20s, fresh out of college, and it always felt like fate more than choice. We clicked instantly, late-night talks that stretched until morning, inside jokes that no one else understood, the kind of chemistry that made me think I had somehow stumbled into the jackpot of relationships. We built a life together, a modest one, but one that made sense to me. I work in it for a regional logistics company, nothing glamorous, but steady, and she's a project manager for a mid-sized marketing firm. Together we bought a small house in the suburbs, raised two kids, and went through all the expected stages of marriage, the honeymoon phase, the grind of young parenthood, the slow return to personal hobbies once the kids were in school. I'll admit I was never the most romantic husband. Pragmatic to a fault, the kind of guy who shows love by paying bills on time, fixing the leaky faucet without being asked, or making sure her car's oil is changed before a long trip. She, on the other hand, has always been more emotional, more tuned into gestures and words. Over the years I could tell she sometimes felt unseen, like she wanted me to sweep her off her feet the way I did in the beginning. I thought she knew me well enough to understand that my love wasn't in constant declarations but in steady presence. Apparently, that wasn't enough. I started noticing changes maybe a year ago. Small at first. She became more protective of her phone, always tilting it away from me when texts came in. I didn't think much of it, everyone's entitled to privacy. But then her hours at work stretched longer and longer. She started coming home later, with vague explanations about late meetings or team deadlines. She was more distracted at home, too, less engaged in our conversations, and more irritable when I asked about her day. Still, I told myself it was just work stress, maybe some midlife burnout. I didn't want to sound paranoid or controlling, so I swallowed my doubts. The turning point came one Friday night. I had been planning to surprise her with a weekend getaway, something I thought might rekindle what had started to feel distant between us. I finished work early, picked up a bottle of wine, and drove home with the idea of telling her to pack a bag. When I got there, though, the house was dark, her car gone. I figured she'd be home soon. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. I called her phone several times, but she didn't pick up. Finally, around 2 in the morning, she stumbled through the door. Her hair was messy, her blouse half untucked, and she reeked of alcohol. She gave me a slurred excuse about drinks with coworkers, and then passed out on the couch before I could ask more questions. I sat there watching her sleep, my stomach twisted in knots. Something was wrong, something much deeper than just work stress. The next day I tried to brush it off. I wanted so badly to believe she was still the woman I married, that there was some explanation that didn't involve betrayal. But over the following weeks, the signs became impossible to ignore. She guarded her phone like it was a second limb. She started going to the gym more often, buying new clothes that didn't fit the image of a woman exhausted from long workdays. She suddenly cared about lingerie again, and the way she looked at me, or rather, didn't look at me, was the loudest clue of all. She seemed present in body but absent in spirit, like her attention was somewhere else entirely. I don't know what finally broke my denial, but one evening while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. I'd never done it before in all our years together. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. The first thing I saw was a string of messages with someone saved under a man's name I didn't recognize. I opened the thread, and my world collapsed in real time. The messages were explicit, intimate, filled with jokes, confessions, and plans. They talked about the things they'd done in hotel rooms, about how much they missed each other, about how she felt alive with him in ways she didn't anymore at home. I sat there on the edge of our bed reading until my vision blurred with tears. I confronted her that night. She didn't even try to deny it. At first, she deflected, said it was complicated, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that she still loved me in her own way. I asked her how long it had been going on. She admitted it had been almost a year. A year. All those late nights, all those cold shoulders, all those excuses, they weren't just stress or burnout. They were lies. I don't think I've ever felt so small in my entire life. The woman I built nearly 2 decades of my life around had been living another life behind my back. She told me she hadn't planned for it to happen, that it started as a friendship at work that spiraled out of control. She said he made her feel seen and desired, words that cut me like knives. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw her things out of the house, but all I could do was sit there in silence, my whole body shaking. She begged me not to tell the kids, not to blow up our family. She said she was confused, that she didn't know if she wanted to stay with me or be with him. And that more than the affair itself was what gutted me. The hesitation. After everything we'd built, everything we'd endured together, she wasn't even sure if I was the one she wanted anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room staring at the blank television screen until the sun came up, my mind replaying every memory of our marriage like an old film reel, except now every scene was poisoned with doubt. Was she texting him during our anniversary dinner last year? Was she thinking about him when she smiled at me over the kitchen table? Were all those times she said she was too tired for intimacy just lies covering up the fact she had already given herself to someone else? I couldn't shut it off. The next morning, I couldn't even look at her. She tried to make small talk, tried to act as if things were normal, but I couldn't play along. I told her I needed space, and I left the house. I drove around aimlessly for hours, not even knowing where I was headed. At one point, I parked outside a grocery store and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting back tears in the middle of the day like some broken man. For weeks after the discovery, our home was a war zone of silence, interrupted only by short, tense conversations about logistics. She promised she would end it with him, swore she wanted to work on us. But trust is not a faucet you can just turn back on once it's been shattered. Every time her phone buzzed, my chest tightened. Every time she left the house, my mind spiraled with images of her in someone else's arms. I thought about telling our kids, teenagers now, old enough to understand, but still too young to carry the burden of their mother's betrayal. I didn't. Not yet. I didn't want them to see her differently. Not while I was still drowning in anger and hurt. But keeping it inside, putting on a mask for them, was its own kind of torment. I'd sit at the dinner table pretending to listen to their stories about school, all the while feeling like my entire life was burning down around me. We tried counseling. At least, I did. I made the appointments. I drove us there. I poured out my pain in front of a stranger while she sat next to me with her arms folded, defensive, sometimes even cold. The therapist asked us to be brutally honest, and when Lavra finally admitted that she had developed feelings for the other man, that he wasn't just a fling, I felt the last flicker of hope die inside me. She said she didn't want to throw away 18 years, but her eyes betrayed her words. She was torn, and I was the one left bleeding while she deliberated between the man she had married and the man who had awakened something in her. The betrayal did strange things to me. I lost weight without trying, meals turning to ash in my mouth. I found myself obsessing over details I didn't even want to know. How many times? Where did it happen? Did she compare us? Did she laugh at me with him? I thought knowing would give me closure, but all it did was deepen the wound. Sometimes I would catch myself scrolling back through her messages, torturing myself with their inside jokes, their pet names, their declarations of longing. I hated her for what she had done, but I hated myself more for being unable to look away. Friends noticed the change in me. A couple of them asked if everything was okay, and I lied, brushing it off as work stress or not sleeping well. The truth was too heavy to say out loud. To admit it would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. The nights were the worst. She would roll over and fall asleep, and I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, feeling the space between us like a canyon. Sometimes I'd slip out of bed and sit on the porch in the dark, chain-smoking cigarettes I hadn't touched in over a decade, watching the glow of the ember fade with each drag. I'd think about what I wanted, what I could tolerate, and whether forgiveness was even possible. Part of me longed to fight for her, to claw back the woman I had fallen in love with. But another part, the louder part, wondered if there was anything left worth saving. Was I clinging to the ghost of a marriage that had already died long before I discovered the affair? One evening, about 2 months after I found out, she confessed that she had seen him again. Just to talk, she said. I laughed a bitter, hollow sound that didn't feel like mine. That was the moment I realized I couldn't keep doing this. She wasn't choosing me, not fully. She was keeping me in the wings while she indulged in the thrill of her new life. I was her safety net, not her partner. I told her I wanted a separation. She cried, begged me to reconsider, said it would destroy the family. I reminded her that she had already destroyed it the night she crossed that line. I packed a bag and went to stay with my brother for a while. Telling the kids was brutal. They looked at me with confusion and hurt. And though I didn't tell them the full story, They weren't stupid. They knew something big had cracked between us. Living alone again at 43 was surreal. I found myself eating takeout at the kitchen counter of my brother's apartment, scrolling through Netflix shows I didn't care about, trying to fill the void. Some nights I would wake up and instinctively reach for her, only to find empty space. Other nights, I would feel a strange, guilty sense of relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. I don't know what the future holds. Divorce feels inevitable, but part of me still grieves the life we built, the woman I thought she was, the man I was when I still believed in us. I tell myself it'll heal, that time will dull the edges of this pain, but right now it feels endless. I'm not sure if he'll ever trust again, not just her, but anyone. It's been about a year since I packed that first bag and walked out of the house I once thought I'd grow old in. I won't lie, the first few months were hell. Divorce papers, custody agreements, financial negotiations, every step was another knife twist. Another reminder that the life I thought was solid had been reduced to legal documents and signatures. There were days I barely functioned, days when even brushing my teeth felt like a chore. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began piecing myself back together. I got my own place, a modest 2-bedroom apartment not far from the kids' school. At first it felt like a hotel room, sterile and temporary, but I forced myself to make it mine, hung up some pictures, bought a decent couch, even planted a few succulents on the windowsill. It wasn't home in the same way the house had been, but it was my space, free from the constant hum of suspicion and resentment. The hardest part was co-parenting. Our kids are teenagers, and teenagers don't miss much. They know something deep broke between their mom and me, even if I never spelled it out. They go back and forth between our places, and I can see the weight in their eyes sometimes, like they're carrying burdens they shouldn't have to. I tried to give them as much stability as I can, movie nights, helping with homework, late-night drives when they need to vent. I don't badmouth their mom, even though part of me wants to scream the truth. They deserve to love her without my bitterness seeping into it. Lavra and I communicate only as much as we need to. Drop-offs, schedules, bills. The woman I once told everything to is now a stranger I exchange polite, clipped messages with. I don't ask about her life, and she doesn't ask about mine. I know she's still seeing him, or maybe someone new by now, but has stopped torturing myself with the details. That chapter of my life is closed, even if the scars remain. One thing I've learned in all this is how easily we lose ourselves in marriage. For nearly 2 decades, my identity was husband and father. One didn't nurture much outside of that. When it all fell apart, I realized I didn't even know who Michael was anymore. So I started experimenting. I signed up for a woodworking class. I joined a hiking group. I even dusted off my old guitar, though my fingers stumble over the strings more than they sing. Little by little, I'm finding pieces of myself I'd buried under the weight of responsibility and routine. Dating again was something I resisted for a long time. Friends nudged me, saying I should get back out there, but the idea made my stomach turn. How could I ever trust someone again? How could I bear myself to another woman after being gutted so completely? But one night, on a whim, I downloaded a dating app. I didn't expect much, I still don't. Most conversations fizzle out, but I've had a few coffee dates, and while none have turned into anything serious, they've reminded me that I'm not invisible, that life doesn't end at 43. There's loneliness, of course. Nights when the apartment is too quiet, when I miss the sound of someone moving around in the kitchen, the comfort of another body next to mine. But there's also freedom in it. I don't have to live in suspicion anymore. I don't have to share my space with lies. That peace is worth something, even if it's tinged with sadness. Sometimes I catch myself reminiscing about the early years with Laura, the camping trips, the road trips, the way she used to laugh at my dumb impressions. Those memories are bittersweet now, like photos of a place that no longer exists. I don't hate her, not anymore. Anger has burned itself out, replaced by something quieter. Resignation, acceptance, maybe even a little pity. She chased a feeling and torched a family for it. That's on her. My job now is to rebuild what's left of me. If there's one thing I'd say to anyone reading this who suspects their partner is cheating, it's this. Trust your gut. Don't gaslight yourself into thinking you're paranoid. And if you do discover the truth, know that as much as it feels like the end of your world, it isn't. It's the end of a world, the one you thought you knew, but another one does exist on the other side. It's not easy, it's not quick, and it's not painless. But you can survive it. So here I am, 43 years old, starting over in ways I never imagined it'd have to. I don't know where I'll be in 5 years, or who I'll be with, or if I'll even want to be with anyone again. But I do know this, I'm still here. I'm scarred, but I'm breathing. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for now.